Today, we're diving into a tale filled with love, betrayal, and second chances. Imagine this: a brilliant surgeon and a ruthless CEO, bound by their differences but drawn together by fate. What happens when a night of unexpected passion turns their worlds upside down? Secrets will be revealed, hearts will be tested, and lives will change forever. Stay tuned, because this is a story you won't want to miss. The city of Chicago was alive with its usual rhythm: cars honking, people rushing, and the skyline standing tall against the golden hues of the setting sun. Among the chaos, Amelia Harper, a renowned architect, sat in her sleek, minimalist office, her fingers tracing the edges of a blueprint. Her sharp green eyes, framed by dark lashes, were focused, her mind racing with ideas. Amelia was known for her creativity and her unyielding principles. She believed that every building she designed should tell a story, evoke emotion, and stand as a testament to art. But Amelia wasn't just a talented architect. She was a woman who had built walls around her heart. Growing up in a broken home, she had learned early on that love was fleeting, unreliable. Her work became her sanctuary, her escape from the vulnerability she feared. Across the city, in a towering glass building that overlooked the bustling streets, Lucas Montgomery sat in his corner office. The CEO of Montgomery Developments, Lucas was a man who thrived on power and control. His reputation as a ruthless businessman preceded him. He was the kind of man who could close a billion-dollar deal without flinching. To Lucas, emotions were a distraction, and profit was the only thing that mattered. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, yet fate had a way of intertwining lives in the most unexpected ways. Amelia's company had recently been hired by Montgomery Developments to design the interiors of a luxury resort, a project that could elevate her career to new heights. But there was one problem: Lucas Montgomery. From the moment they met, sparks flew, not the romantic kind, but the kind that ignited arguments. "Ms. Harper," Lucas had said during their first meeting, his tone clipped and businesslike, "I need this project completed under budget and ahead of schedule. No unnecessary frills." Amelia had raised an eyebrow, her voice calm but firm. "Mr. Montgomery, if you want a cookie-cutter design, I suggest you hire someone else. I don't compromise on quality." Their clashes became a regular occurrence. Lucas saw Amelia as stubborn and idealistic, while Amelia viewed Lucas as cold and heartless. Yet beneath the heated arguments there was an undeniable tension, a pull they both refused to acknowledge. Amelia often found herself wondering why Lucas's words lingered in her mind long after their meetings ended. Was it the way his deep blue eyes seemed to pierce through her defenses, or the rare moments when his sharp demeanor softened, revealing glimpses of a man she couldn't quite figure out? For Lucas, Amelia was an enigma. She was the only person who dared to challenge him, to stand her ground in a world where most people bent to his will. Her passion for her work, her fiery determination, it was both infuriating and captivating. But neither of them was willing to admit that their animosity masked something deeper. As the days turned into weeks, their interactions grew more intense. The project demanded constant collaboration, forcing them to spend more time together, and while their arguments often left the room charged with tension, there were fleeting moments when their eyes met across the table, or when Lucas caught Amelia smiling to herself, that hinted at something neither of them was ready to face. Chicago's skyline stood as a silent witness to their growing connection, a connection that neither Amelia nor Lucas could fully understand. But one thing was certain: their lives were about to change in ways they never could have imagined. The Montgomery Resort project was shaping up to be the most ambitious undertaking of Amelia's career. The sprawling luxury resort, set to be built on the outskirts of Chicago, was Lucas Montgomery's latest venture, a statement of his dominance in the real estate world. For Amelia, it was an opportunity to showcase her artistry on a grand scale. But working with Lucas was proving to be a challenge she hadn't anticipated. "Ms. Harper, this design is impractical," Lucas said, his voice sharp as he slid a set of blueprints across the conference table. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers, daring her to argue. Amelia didn't flinch. She picked up the blueprints, her green eyes scanning the page before meeting his gaze. Impractical? Or is it that you don't understand the value of creating something timeless? Lucas leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Timeless doesn't pay the bills. I need something that works, not something that belongs in an art gallery. The room was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The other team members exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or let the two titans clash. Amelia's voice was calm but firm. If you want a design that's forgettable, hire someone else. But if you want a resort that people will talk about for decades, you'll let me do my job. Lucas's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he stood, gathering his papers. You have until the end of the week to revise this. Don't waste my time, Miss Harper. As he walked out of the room, Amelia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Lucas Montgomery was infuriating, but she wasn't about to back down. Their interactions continued to be a battlefield. Every meeting was a tug-of-war between Lucas's practicality and Amelia's vision. Yet, amidst the arguments, there were moments that caught them both off guard. One evening, as they worked late in the office, Lucas walked into the design studio where Amelia was sketching. The room was dimly lit, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting shadows on her face. She was so engrossed in her work that she didn't notice him at first. You're still here, he said, his voice softer than usual. Amelia looked up, startled. I could say the same about you. Lucas stepped closer, his eyes scanning the intricate sketches spread across her desk. You're talented, he admitted almost reluctantly. Amelia blinked, surprised by the compliment. Thank you, she said cautiously. For a moment, the tension between them seemed to dissolve. Lucas's gaze lingered on her, and Amelia felt her heart skip a beat. But just as quickly as the moment came, it was gone. Don't let it go to your head, Lucas said, his tone returning to its usual sharpness. I still expect results. Amelia rolled her eyes as he walked away, but she couldn't ignore the way her pulse quickened whenever he was near. As the weeks went on, their arguments became less about the project and more about each other. You think you know everything, don't you? Amelia snapped during one particularly heated meeting. Lucas smirked, leaning forward. And you think the world revolves around your artistic vision? Newsflash, Miss Harper, it doesn't. Their colleagues watched in stunned silence as the two continued to spar, their words laced with both frustration and something unspoken. But beneath the surface, both Amelia and Lucas were beginning to see each other in a new light. Lucas admired Amelia's passion and her refusal to back down, while Amelia couldn't help but notice the rare moments when Lucas let his guard down, revealing a man who wasn't as cold as he seemed. One evening, after another long day of work, Amelia found herself alone in the office. She was reviewing the latest designs when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Lucas. Meet me at the site tomorrow morning. I want to show you something. Curious, Amelia arrived at the construction site the next day. Lucas was already there, standing amidst the steel beams and scaffolding. I wanted you to see this, he said, gesturing to the view. The sun was rising, casting a golden glow over the city skyline. Amelia was taken aback. It's beautiful, she admitted. Lucas turned to her, his expression uncharacteristically soft. Sometimes, even I forget why I do this. It's not just about the money. It's about creating something that lasts. For the first time, Amelia saw a side of Lucas that he rarely showed, a man who cared, even if he tried to hide it. But just as she began to let her guard down, Lucas's phone buzzed, pulling him back into his world of deals and deadlines. The moment was over, leaving Amelia wondering if she had imagined it. The tension between them continued to build, a mix of frustration, admiration, and something neither of them was ready to name. But one thing was clear. Their lives were becoming increasingly intertwined, and neither of them could deny the pull that drew them closer. The Montgomery Resort project had reached a critical stage, and Lucas Montgomery was determined to secure the attention of international investors. To do so, he planned an extravagant gala in Paris, the city of lights and luxury. It was an event designed to impress, and Lucas insisted that Amelia Harper attend. Amelia, however, was less than thrilled. The idea of spending an entire evening in Lucas's orbit, surrounded by his world of wealth and power, was far from appealing. But she couldn't deny the opportunity it presented for her career. Reluctantly, she agreed. The gala was held in a grand ballroom overlooking the Seine, its crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed crowd. Amelia arrived in a sleek black gown, her hair swept into a simple yet sophisticated style. She felt out of place among the glittering guests, but she refused to let it show. Lucas spotted her the moment she walked in. For a brief second, he was caught off guard. Amelia was always striking, but tonight she was breathtaking. He quickly masked his reaction, approaching her with his usual air of confidence. "You clean up well, Miss Harper," he said, his tone teasing. Amelia raised an eyebrow, refusing to let him see the effect his presence had on her. "And you're as insufferable as ever, Mr. Montgomery." Lucas smirked, but before he could respond, they were interrupted by a group of investors eager to speak with him. Amelia used the opportunity to slip away, finding a quiet corner where she could observe the room without being noticed. As the evening wore on, Amelia found herself growing restless. She had done her part mingling with guests, answering questions about the project, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cool Parisian air a welcome relief from the crowded ballroom. She wasn't alone for long. "I thought I'd find you here," Lucas said, his deep voice cutting through the quiet. Amelia turned to see him standing in the doorway, his tuxedo perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable. "Shouldn't you be inside charming your investors?" she asked, her tone light but guarded. Lucas stepped closer, his gaze steady. "I've done enough charming for one night. Besides, I wanted to check on you." Amelia frowned, unsure how to respond. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Lucas leaned against the railing, his eyes fixed on the city below. "You don't like this world, do you?" Amelia hesitated before answering. "It's not that. I don't belong here." Lucas turned to her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen it. "You belong wherever you want to be, Amelia. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." For a moment, the tension between them shifted. The usual sharpness in their exchanges was replaced by something gentler, something neither of them fully understood. The night continued, and as the champagne flowed, so did their conversations. Lucas, uncharacteristically candid, shared stories of his childhood, how he had grown up in a small town, watching his parents struggle to make ends meet. It was those struggles, he admitted, that had shaped his relentless drive for success. Amelia listened, surprised by his vulnerability. She had always seen Lucas as a man consumed by ambition, but now she glimpsed the person beneath the polished exterior. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly. Lucas chuckled, a rare, genuine sound. "Neither are you." The evening took an unexpected turn when Lucas invited Amelia to join him for a late-night walk along the Seine. The city was quiet, the streets bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. For the first time, they weren't CEO and architect, adversaries locked in a battle of wills. They were just two people, sharing a moment in a city far from home. Back at the hotel, the weight of the evening hung between them. Amelia knew she should say goodnight and retreat to the safety of her room, but something stopped her. "Amelia," Lucas said, his voice low, "I don't know what this is between us, but I can't ignore it anymore." Her heart raced as she met his gaze. "Neither can I," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The distance between them disappeared in an instant. Their kiss was slow at first, tentative, as if they were both testing the waters, but it quickly deepened, fueled by the tension that had been building between them for weeks. That night, in the city of love, Amelia and Lucas crossed a line they could never uncross. The next morning, Amelia woke to the soft light of dawn streaming through the curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was, but the sight of Lucas sleeping beside her brought everything back. Panic set in. What had she done? Quietly she slipped out of bed, gathering her things and leaving before Lucas could wake. As she walked through the empty hotel lobby, her mind raced with questions she didn't have answers to. She told herself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that could never happen again. But deep down, she knew the truth. Nothing between her and Lucas would ever be the same. Amelia Harper had always prided herself on her ability to stay composed, no matter the situation. But as she sat in her small Chicago apartment, staring at the pregnancy test in her trembling hands, she felt her world tilt on its axis. 2 pink lines. Her heart pounded in her chest as the reality sank in. She was pregnant, and there was no question about who the father was. Lucas Montgomery. The name alone sent a wave of conflicting emotions through her. Anger, fear, and something she refused to name. She had spent weeks avoiding him since that night in Paris, throwing herself into work and pretending nothing had happened. But now there was no avoiding the truth. Amelia paced the room, her mind racing. Telling Lucas wasn't an option. He was a man who thrived on control, and she couldn't bear the thought of him treating her pregnancy like another business deal. She had seen the way he operated, calculated, detached, always focused on the bottom line. No, she decided. This was her child, and she would raise it on her own. But as the days turned into weeks, keeping the secret became harder than she anticipated. Morning sickness made it difficult to keep up with her demanding schedule, and her growing exhaustion didn't go unnoticed by her colleagues or by Lucas. "Miss Harper," Lucas said one afternoon, his tone sharp as he cornered her in the office hallway. "You've been avoiding me." Amelia froze, clutching the stack of blueprints in her hands. "I've been busy," she replied, keeping her voice steady. Lucas narrowed his eyes, his gaze piercing. "Busy avoiding me, it seems. Is this about Paris?" Her stomach twisted at the mention of that night. "There's nothing to talk about," she said quickly, brushing past him. But Lucas wasn't one to let things go. Over the next few weeks, he continued to press her, his frustration growing with each evasive answer. Amelia knew she couldn't keep the truth hidden forever, but she wasn't ready to face Lucas. Instead, she turned to the one person she trusted completely, Ethan Carter, her childhood best friend. Ethan had just returned to Chicago after spending years working abroad as a journalist. He was the kind of person who could make anyone feel at ease with his easy smile and warm demeanor. When Amelia told him about her pregnancy, he didn't judge or question her decision to keep it a secret. "I'll be here for you, no matter what," Ethan promised, his voice steady. Amelia felt a wave of relief. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what I'd do without you." But as much as Ethan wanted to help, he couldn't ignore the growing tension between Amelia and Lucas. He saw the way Lucas looked at her during meetings, the way his frustration turned to concern when he thought no one was watching. One evening, as Amelia and Ethan sat in her apartment discussing baby names, there was a knock at the door. Amelia's heart sank as she opened it to find Lucas standing there, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said, his voice firm. Amelia hesitated, glancing back at Ethan, who gave her a reassuring nod before stepping into the other room. Lucas stepped inside, his presence filling the small space. "You've been avoiding me for weeks, and I'm done playing games. What's going on, Amelia?" She crossed her arms, her defenses rising. "Nothing is going on, Lucas. I've been busy, that's all." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me. I know something's wrong." For a moment, Amelia considered telling him the truth, but fear held her back. The fear of losing control, of letting Lucas dictate her life. "It's none of your business," she said finally, her voice cold. Lucas's jaw tightened, his frustration evident. "You're hiding something, and I'm going to find out what it is." With that, he turned and left, leaving Amelia feeling more conflicted than ever. As the weeks passed, Amelia's secret became harder to keep. Her growing belly was impossible to hide, and whispers began to circulate around the office. Lucas, ever the observant businessman, was quick to notice. One afternoon, as Amelia worked late in the design studio, Lucas appeared in the doorway. "Amelia," he said, his voice softer than usual. She looked up, startled. "What are you doing here?" Lucas stepped inside, his gaze fixed on her. "I know." Her heart stopped. "Know what?" He gestured toward her stomach, his expression a mix of anger and something she couldn't quite place. "You're pregnant, and I'm guessing it's mine." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. She had prepared for this moment, but now that it was here, she didn't know what to say. "It's not yours," she said quickly, the lie slipping out before she could stop it. Lucas's eyes darkened, his jaw clenching. "Don't lie to me, Amelia." "I'm not lying," she insisted, her voice trembling. "The baby isn't yours." Lucas stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded, though his eyes betrayed his doubt. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "If that's how you want to play it, so be it." As he walked away, Amelia felt a pang of guilt, but she told herself it was for the best. Lucas Montgomery didn't belong in her world or her child's. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Amelia. She threw herself into work, determined to focus on the Montgomery Resort project and ignore the growing tension between her and Lucas. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the weight of her secret or the guilt that came with lying to him. Lucas, on the other hand, wasn't one to let things go. Though Amelia's denial had left him angry and frustrated, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling the truth. He noticed the way she avoided his gaze during meetings, the way her hand instinctively rested on her stomach when she thought no one was looking. He didn't have proof, but deep down, he knew. Amelia's only solace during this time was Ethan Carter. He had become her rock, always there to offer support and reassurance. But even Ethan could see the toll the situation was taking on her. "You can't keep this up, Amelia," Ethan said one evening as they sat in her apartment. "Lucas deserves to know the truth." Amelia shook her head, her voice firm. "No, Ethan, you'll try to take control, and I can't let that happen. This is my child, and I won't let him dictate how I raise it." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I get it, Amelia, I do. But lying to him isn't the answer. He's not stupid, he's going to figure it out eventually." Amelia didn't respond, her gaze fixed on the floor. Deep down, she knew Ethan was right. But the thought of confronting Lucas, of letting him into her life and her child's life, was terrifying. The breaking point came during a company event. It was a formal dinner to celebrate the progress of the Montgomery Resort project, and Amelia had reluctantly agreed to attend. She wore a loose-fitting dress in an attempt to hide her growing belly, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to conceal. Lucas was there, of course, his commanding presence impossible to ignore. He spent most of the evening mingling with investors, but his eyes kept drifting to Amelia. There was something different about her tonight, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As the night went on, Lucas finally approached her. "Amelia," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk." Amelia stiffened, her heart racing. "Not now, Lucas." "Yes, now," he insisted, his tone leaving no room for argument. He led her out onto the balcony, away from the prying eyes of their colleagues. The cool night air did little to calm Amelia's nerves as Lucas turned to face her. "I'm done playing games," he said, his blue eyes piercing. "I know the baby is mine, Amelia. Stop lying to me." Amelia's breath caught in her throat. She opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. "Well?" Lucas demanded, his voice filled with frustration. "Why would you keep this from me?" Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she finally broke. "Because I was scared, Lucas. I didn't want you to treat this like another business deal. I didn't want you to take over my life or my child's life." Lucas stared at her, his expression a mix of anger and hurt. "You think so little of me?" Amelia wiped at her tears, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to think, Lucas. All I know is that I've spent my whole life trying to protect myself, and I didn't know how to let you in." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The tension between them was palpable, the weight of their unspoken feelings hanging in the air. Finally, Lucas took a step closer, his voice softer. "Amelia, I'm not perfect. I know I've made mistakes, and I know I can be difficult. But this isn't just about you or me anymore. This is about our child, and I want to be a part of their life, whether you like it or not." Amelia looked up at him, her heart aching with a mix of fear and hope. "I don't know if I can trust you, Lucas." "Then let me prove it to you," he said, his voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere, Amelia. Not this time." The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. Lucas, true to his word, began to show a side of himself that Amelia had never seen before. He attended doctor's appointments with her, asked questions about the baby, and even started making changes to his demanding schedule to prioritize her and the child. At first, Amelia was skeptical. She had spent so long building walls around herself that letting Lucas in felt impossible, but slowly, he began to chip away at her defenses. One evening, as they sat in her apartment discussing baby names, Amelia found herself laughing at one of Lucas's rare jokes. It was a small moment, but it felt significant. A glimpse of what their lives could be if they let go of their fears and trusted each other. But not everything was smooth sailing. Lucas's involvement in Amelia's life didn't go unnoticed by their colleagues, and rumors began to spread. Some questioned whether their relationship was appropriate, while others speculated about the future of the Montgomery Resort project. Through it all, Lucas remained steadfast. He didn't care what people thought. His focus was on Amelia and their child. For the first time in her life, Amelia began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face everything alone. As the months passed, Amelia and Lucas found themselves navigating an uneasy truce. While Lucas was determined to be involved in the pregnancy, Amelia still struggled to fully trust him. Their relationship was a delicate balance of cooperation and tension, with moments of warmth overshadowed by their unresolved past. But one thing was certain: the baby had become the center of their world. One afternoon, as Amelia sat in her office reviewing the final designs for the Montgomery Resort, Lucas appeared in the doorway. "Amelia," he said, his tone softer than usual. "Do you have a minute?" She looked up, surprised by his uncharacteristic hesitation. "What is it?" Lucas stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He held a small envelope in his hand, which he placed on her desk. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion, "about everything, about us, and I realize there's something you don't know about me, something I should have told you a long time ago." Amelia frowned, her curiosity piqued. "What are you talking about?" Lucas gestured to the envelope. "It's all in there. I'll let you read it, but I want you to hear it from me first." Amelia hesitated before picking up the envelope. Inside was a photograph of a young boy, no older than 6, standing next to a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile. "That's me," Lucas said quietly, "and that's my mother." Amelia looked up, confused. "I don't understand." Lucas took a deep breath, his gaze distant. "I grew up in a small town, like I told you. But what I didn't tell you is that my father left us when I was 5. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. She was the strongest person I've ever known, but it wasn't enough. She got sick, and we couldn't afford the treatment she needed." Amelia's heart ached as she listened, the pain in Lucas's voice cutting through her defenses. "He died when I was 16, he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I swore I'd never let myself be vulnerable again. That's why I built this company, why I've spent my life chasing success. I thought if I had enough power, enough money, I could protect myself from ever feeling that kind of pain again." Amelia reached out, placing a hand on his arm. "Lucas, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." He looked at her, his blue eyes filled with a vulnerability she had never seen before. "I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because I want you to understand why I've been the way I am, why I've made the choices I've made." Amelia nodded, her voice soft. "Thank you for telling me." For the first time, she saw Lucas not as the ruthless CEO she had clashed with, but as a man who had been shaped by loss and pain, and in that moment, something shifted between them. As the weeks went on, Lucas continued to show Amelia a side of himself that few people ever saw. He was attentive and thoughtful, surprising her with small gestures that showed he was paying attention. He brought her tea when she was working late, insisted on driving her to doctor's appointments, and even started reading parenting books. Amelia couldn't deny that he was trying, and slowly she began to let her guard down. One evening, as they sat in her apartment discussing the baby's nursery, Lucas turned to her with a serious expression. "Amelia," he said, "I know we've had our differences, and I know I've made mistakes, but I want you to know that I'm all in. For you, for the baby, for us." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. "Lucas, He held up a hand, stopping her. "You don't have to say anything right now. I just needed you to know how I feel." Amelia nodded, her emotions swirling. She wasn't ready to make promises, but for the first time she allowed herself to imagine a future where they could be a family. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, the past came back to haunt them. One afternoon, as Amelia was leaving the office, she was approached by a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was tall and elegant, with sharp features and a cold smile. "You must be Amelia Harper," the woman said, her tone dripping with disdain. Amelia frowned, her instincts immediately on high alert. "Who are you?" The woman smirked. "I'm Victoria Langston, Lucas's ex-fiancée." Amelia's stomach dropped. She had heard whispers about Victoria, a powerful businesswoman who had once been engaged to Lucas before their relationship ended abruptly. "I thought I'd come introduce myself," Victoria continued, her voice icy. "After all, it seems you've managed to do what I couldn't, tie Lucas down." Amelia bristled at the implication. "If you have something to say, just say it." Victoria's smile widened. "Oh, I just wanted to warn you. Lucas may seem like he's changed, but trust me, he hasn't. He'll always put his work first. And when things get tough, he'll walk away, just like he did with me." Amelia's heart pounded as Victoria walked away, her words echoing in her mind. That night, as she sat alone in her apartment, Amelia couldn't shake the doubts that Victoria had planted. Could she really trust Lucas? Or was she setting herself up for heartbreak? When Lucas called to check on her, she hesitated before answering. "Amelia," he said, his voice warm, "is everything okay?" She wanted to tell him the truth, to let him reassure her, but the fear of being hurt held her back. "I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile he couldn't see. But deep down, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Amelia couldn't shake Victoria's words. They lingered in her mind like a dark cloud, casting doubt over everything she and Lucas had built in the past few months. She wanted to believe that Lucas had changed, that he was committed to her and their child, but the fear of being abandoned, of being left to face everything alone, was too strong to ignore. Lucas, on the other hand, sensed that something was wrong. Amelia had grown distant, her once warm demeanor replaced by a guardedness he hadn't seen since the early days of their relationship. One evening, as they sat in her apartment discussing the baby's upcoming ultrasound, Lucas finally confronted her. "Amelia," he said, his voice steady but firm, "what's going on? You've been pulling away from me, and I don't understand why." Amelia hesitated, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I'm just tired, Lucas, it's nothing." He frowned, his piercing blue eyes searching hers. "Don't lie to me. I know you, Amelia. Something's bothering you, and I want to know what it is." She looked away, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to tell him the truth about Victoria's visit, but another part of her was afraid of what he might say. "It's nothing," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas's jaw tightened, frustration flickering across his face. "If we're going to make this work, Amelia, you have to trust me. I can't fix what I don't know." Her eyes snapped back to his, anger flaring. "Trust you? How can I trust you, Lucas, when I don't even know if you're capable of staying? Everyone says you'll leave when things get hard. Even your ex-fiancé said it." The words were out before she could stop them, and the silence that followed was deafening. Lucas's expression darkened, his frustration giving way to something deeper, hurt. "Victoria," he said quietly, his voice laced with disbelief. "She came to see you, didn't she?" Amelia nodded, her anger fading as guilt crept in. "She said you'd leave, that you'd always put work first, and I—" "You believed her," Lucas finished, his tone cold. Amelia opened her mouth to respond, but he held up a hand, stopping her. "Victoria and I ended things because we wanted different things," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "She wanted a partner who would give up everything for her, and I wasn't that person. But that doesn't mean I'm the man she says I am." Amelia's heart ached at the pain in his voice, but she couldn't ignore her own fears. "How do I know you won't do the same to me, Lucas? How do I know you won't walk away when things get hard?" Lucas stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Because I've already made my choice, Amelia. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But if you can't see that, if you can't trust me, then I don't know what else I can do." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For the first time, Amelia realized that her fear wasn't just about Lucas. It was about her own inability to let go of the walls she had built around herself. The days that followed were tense. Lucas gave Amelia space, but his absence only made her realize how much she had come to rely on him. She missed his steady presence, his quiet determination to be there for her and their child. Ethan, ever the voice of reason, finally stepped in. "You're pushing him away, Amelia," Ethan said one evening as they sat in her apartment. "And for what? Because you're scared? That's not fair to him or to you." Amelia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know how to let him in, Ethan. I've spent my whole life protecting myself, and now it's just so hard." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do it all at once, but you have to start somewhere. Lucas isn't perfect, but he's trying, and if you keep shutting him out, you're going to lose him." Amelia nodded, her resolve hardening. She couldn't let her fear dictate her life, not anymore. The turning point came during the baby's next ultrasound appointment. Amelia had invited Lucas, but she wasn't sure if he would show up after their argument. As she sat in the waiting room, her heart raced with anticipation and dread. But when the door opened and Lucas walked in, her breath caught. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in days, but his determination was clear. "I'm here," he said simply, taking the seat beside her. Amelia felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you," she said softly. The ultrasound was a moment of clarity for both of them. As they watched the tiny heartbeat flicker on the screen, the weight of their fears and doubts seemed to fade away. "That's our baby?" Lucas said, his voice filled with wonder. Amelia looked at him, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Lucas, for doubting you, for pushing you away. I was scared, but I don't want to be anymore." Lucas reached for her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "We'll figure it out, Amelia. Together." From that moment on, things began to change. Amelia and Lucas started to rebuild their relationship, one step at a time. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of doubt and tension, but they were committed to making it work. Lucas proved his dedication in ways that surprised Amelia. He scaled back his work hours, attended parenting classes with her, and even started planning for the future, a future that included not just their child, but her as well. For the first time in a long time, Amelia allowed herself to hope. But as they prepared for the arrival of their baby, a new challenge loomed on the horizon, one that would test their newfound trust and force them to confront the past once and for all. As Amelia and Lucas worked to rebuild their relationship, Life seemed to settle into a fragile but hopeful rhythm. They attended doctor's appointments together, spent evenings discussing baby names, and even began preparing the nursery in Lucas's penthouse. For the first time, Amelia allowed herself to believe that they could be a family. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected storm threatened to tear them apart. It started with a phone call. Amelia was in her office, reviewing patient files, when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. It was a number she hadn't seen in years, a number she had hoped to forget. Her hands trembled as she answered. "Hello? Amelia?" a familiar voice said, cold and sharp. "It's your father." Her heart sank. She hadn't spoken to her father in over a decade, not since he had walked out on her and her mother. The memories of his betrayal, his lies, and the pain he had caused came rushing back, threatening to overwhelm her. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice icy. "I heard you're having a baby," he said, his tone casual, as if they were old friends catching up. "I thought it was time we reconnected." Amelia's grip on the phone tightened. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk back into my life like nothing happened." Her father sighed, his voice taking on a manipulative edge. "I made mistakes, Amelia, but I'm still your father. Don't you think your child deserves to know their grandfather?" Amelia's stomach churned. She wanted to hang up, to shut him out the way he had shut her out all those years ago, but his words planted a seed of doubt in her mind. That evening, as she sat in Lucas's penthouse, her thoughts were miles away. Lucas noticed her distraction immediately. "Amelia," he said, sitting beside her on the couch. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, unsure if she should tell him, but after everything they had been through, she knew she couldn't keep this from him. "My father called," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas's expression darkened. "What did he want?" "He said he wants to reconnect," she replied, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "But I don't trust him, Lucas. He left us when I was a kid. He hurt my mom, and he hurt me. I don't know if I can let him back into my life." Lucas reached for her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "You don't owe him anything, Amelia. If he walked out on you once, he could do it again. You have to think about what's best for you and for our child." Amelia nodded, but the doubt lingered. She had spent her whole life trying to protect herself from the pain of abandonment, but now, with her father back in the picture, she felt like that little girl all over again, scared, vulnerable, and unsure of what to do. The situation grew more complicated when her father showed up at the hospital unannounced. Amelia was in the middle of a meeting when a nurse informed her that a man claiming to be her father was waiting in the lobby. Her heart raced as she made her way downstairs, unsure of what to expect. When she saw him, she barely recognized him. He looked older, thinner, and more worn down than she remembered. "Amelia," he said, his voice soft and almost pleading. "I just want to talk." She crossed her arms, her defenses rising. "You have 5 minutes." Her father sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you and your mother. But I've changed, Amelia. I've been sober for 10 years and I want to make things right." Amelia's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the wounds he had left behind were still raw. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice trembling. "You left us when we needed you the most. How do I know you won't do it again?" Her father's eyes filled with regret. "You don't. But I'm asking for a chance to prove myself. Please, Amelia, let me be a part of your life again." That night, Amelia confided in Lucas once more. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "Part of me wants to give him a chance, but the other part of me is terrified he'll hurt me again." Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "You don't have to decide right now. Take your time. But whatever you choose, I'll be here for you." His words brought her comfort, but the decision weighed heavily on her. As the weeks went on, Amelia tried to focus on preparing for the baby, but her father's presence loomed over her like a shadow. He sent her messages, asking to meet, and even left a letter at her apartment, detailing his regrets and his hopes for the future. Lucas remained supportive, but Amelia could see the tension in his eyes. He didn't trust her father, and he didn't want her to get hurt. The breaking point came when her father showed up at the penthouse, uninvited. Lucas answered the door, his expression cold and unyielding. "You need to leave," Lucas said firmly. "I just want to talk to my daughter," her father replied, his tone defensive. Lucas stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You've done enough damage. Amelia doesn't need you in her life, and neither does our child." Amelia appeared in the doorway, her heart pounding. "Lucas, stop!" Lucas turned to her, his frustration evident. "Amelia, you don't have to do this. You don't owe him anything." She looked between the two men, her emotions swirling. "I need to handle this on my own, Lucas. Please." Reluctantly, Lucas stepped aside, his jaw clenched. Amelia and her father sat in the living room, the tension thick in the air. "I'm not here to cause trouble," her father said. "I just want to be a part of your life again." Amelia took a deep breath, her voice steady. "If you want to be in my life, you have to prove it. No more empty promises, no more lies. And if you hurt me or my child, you're gone. Do you understand?" Her father nodded, his eyes filled with hope. "I understand. Thank you, Amelia." That night, as she and Lucas sat together, she reached for his hand. "I'm scared," she admitted, "but I want to try. Not for him, for me. I need to know if he's really changed." Lucas squeezed her hand, his voice soft. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." For the first time, Amelia felt a sense of peace. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she wasn't alone. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Amelia. Her father's reappearance in her life brought back memories she had buried long ago. Memories of laughter, love, and the pain of abandonment. But as much as she wanted to protect herself, she also knew that holding on to the past would only weigh her down. Lucas, ever the steady presence, supported her through it all. Though he remained wary of her father, he respected Amelia's decision to give him a chance. It wasn't easy for Lucas to step back, but he knew this was something Amelia needed to face on her own. One afternoon, Amelia agreed to meet her father for coffee. It was their first real conversation since he had walked out of her life all those years ago. As they sat across from each other, the tension was palpable. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," her father began, his voice quiet but sincere. "But I want to be honest with you, Amelia. I was a coward. I let my addiction control me, and I hurt the people I loved the most. I've spent the last 10 years trying to make amends, but the one person I've always been too afraid to face was you." Amelia's chest tightened. She had spent so many years hating him, blaming him for the pain he had caused. But now, sitting across from him, she saw a man who was broken but trying to rebuild himself. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said honestly, her voice trembling. "But I'm willing to try. For me, and for my child." Her father's eyes filled with tears. "That's all I can ask for. Thank you, Amelia." As Amelia worked to rebuild her relationship with her father, she also found herself growing closer to Lucas. Their shared journey of preparing for the baby had brought them to a place of understanding and trust that neither of them had thought possible. One evening, as they sat in the nursery putting together a crib, Lucas turned to her with a rare, soft smile. "You know," he said, his voice warm, "I never thought I'd be here, building a crib, planning for a baby, falling in love." Amelia froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Lucas." He reached for her hand, his gaze steady. "I love you, Amelia. I know I've made mistakes, and I know I'm not perfect, but I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm here for you and our child. Always." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she looked at him. For so long, she had been afraid to let herself love, to let herself believe in the possibility of happiness. But Lucas had shown her that love didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be real. "I love you too," she whispered, her voice breaking. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. In that moment, Amelia felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The day of the baby's birth was both chaotic and beautiful. Amelia went into labor early one morning, and Lucas, true to his word, was by her side every step of the way. As she held their newborn daughter in her arms, tears streamed down her face. She looked up at Lucas, who was gazing at their child with a mixture of awe and love. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Amelia smiled, her heart full. "She is." They named her Lily, a name that symbolized hope and new beginnings. In the weeks that followed, Amelia and Lucas settled into their new roles as parents. It wasn't always easy. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and the occasional argument. But through it all, they leaned on each other. Amelia's father also became a part of their lives, though cautiously at first. He visited often, bringing small gifts for Lily and sharing stories of Amelia's childhood. Over time, Amelia began to see that he was truly trying to change. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, her father turned to her with a serious expression. "I want you to know how proud I am of you, Amelia," he said. "You've built a life for yourself that I could only dream of, and seeing you with Lucas and Lily, it gives me hope." Amelia felt a lump in her throat. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm still figuring things out, but I'm trying." Her father nodded, his eyes filled with emotion. "That's all any of us can do." As the months turned into years, Amelia and Lucas's relationship continued to grow. They faced challenges together, from balancing their demanding careers with parenthood to navigating the complexities of their pasts. But through it all, they remained committed to each other and to their family. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their home, watching Lily play in the garden below, Lucas turned to Amelia with a smile. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. Amelia laughed, leaning her head against his shoulder. "All the time. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be here, with you and Lily, I wouldn't have believed it." Lucas kissed the top of her head, his voice soft. "I'm glad we found our way to each other." Amelia smiled, her heart full. "Me too." In the end, their story wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, forgiveness, and the courage to take a chance on love. Amelia had learned to let go of her fears and open her heart, while Lucas had discovered that true strength came from vulnerability. Together, they had built a life filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a brighter future. And as they watched their daughter grow, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as a family. Thank you so much for watching today's story on Emma's Stories. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt and inspiring stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think about today's story. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next one.